To be on your best behavior, be respectful of the performers and presentation on stage. There's a lot of work that went into this. Without further delay, I want to introduce Miss Maddie Smith Broom.
Good afternoon. At this time, I'd like to introduce Morgan Jackson to conduct our opening activities. And then we'll be aided by the Sapulpa High School ROTC.
Thank you. Please stand for the presentation of colors and remain standing until the colors are on the stage. Please join me in pledging allegiance to the flag. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you. You may be seated.
Before we actually begin, I would like to take this opportunity to thank and acknowledge those that assisted with the production of today's event. Many thanks to Ms. Myers, Mr. Wilkin, Major Swepson, Sergeant Williams, Mr. Ament, Mr. Mazzarco, Ms. Groves, Ms. McClanahan, Ms. Caleb, Ms. Chupko, Ms. Rogers, Ms. Waller, Ms. Ackerman, Ms. Whitcliffe, Ms. Kimberly Manning, Ms. Anna Benson, Ms. Sandra Hill, Mr. Warren, and Mr. Shibley. As an organization, we appreciate all your input and considerations. Thank you. Black History Month owes its start to Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which organized Negro History Week. The week grew into Black History Month, officially proclaimed in 1976. Today, we have set aside this isolated moment to not only tune in to Black history, but to also trace some focus on cultural awareness. One of the goals of our NAACP chapter is to promote diversity without prejudice and to demonstrate respect. Black history is deeply rooted with religion, strong beliefs, and faith. Believing that struggles and challenges are only temporary and there's always hope. Today we celebrate as we proclaim that we are accepting and realizing our role in society with the noted television theme, Did I Do That?, placing emphasis on some of the accomplishments of people of color. We would like to acknowledge unity and to actually demonstrate that we are linked to others with partnering organizations. We would also like to acknowledge diversity. We truly have overcome adversity and pooled our strengths to bring you today's presentation. At this time, I would like to introduce our chapter officers, and I'm going to ask them to please stand and be recognized. I know that the platform seems scant. All of our officers did not come up on stage, but that's okay. We have our president, Breon Williams, of 2 years. And we also have our project coordinator and public relations interactive person, Ambrosia Ackerman. I'm going to ask them to take their chairs with them, if you don't mind. We're not going to be able to close the the blue curtain, because of it's already set up for the choir. The hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing, was written by James Weldon Johnson, is known to us as the national anthem for African Americans. It plays emphasis on the history of people of color, which includes many triumphs and many struggles. It was first performed in 1900 by a children's choir, and here to perform it today is Breon Williams, accompanied by Bruce Wilkins.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty.
Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies.
That was Ms. Kay Cherie Meggs, Assistant Grion. We are fortunate enough today and blessed to have with us a former Sapulpa High School graduate. She graduated here from Sapulpa High School in 1992. And I'm going to read to you the introduction that I have for her. It states that she's motivated by her passion to get rid of BS and correct social isms like racism, sexism, classism, and plain old stupidism. Risha Grant is the CEO and founder of Risha Grant LLC, an award-winning full-service diversity communications and consulting firm. Its mission is to utilize diversity, communication strategies, tactics, and training as a catalyst to create inclusive cultures in companies and in communities. It is her personal mission to expose the value of diversity and inclusion while making sure our collective voices are heard and all contributions are respected. To that end, she has personally raised more than $500,000 towards diversity and inclusion, economic development, and empowerment projects throughout the state of Oklahoma, using passion, persistence, and knowledge to solidify a seat at the table. She has consulted with the governors, mayors, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and other business and community leaders to discuss and strategize diversity and inclusion initiatives. As an international speaker and consultant, Risha's clients include the Rapid 7, the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, the NBA's Oklahoma City Thunder, United States District Courts of Western Oklahoma, Exelon Corporation, Tulsa Public Schools, Wells Fargo, National Mortgage Industry and Boy Scouts of America, among others. And now you can add Sapulpa High School to that long list. Using humor, interactive keynotes, and deep dive training session, Risha teaches and empowers her attendees with diversity and inclusive tools to increase their bottom line and permission to get rid of their BS. Grant's column, Risha Talks, runs monthly in the Tulsa World. She recently published her first book, That's BS. That's how bias synopsis disrupts inclusion, cultures, and the power to attract diverse markets. Would you join me in welcoming Ms. Risha Grant?
What's up, Sapulpa High School? Man, it's so glad to be here. There is nothing that makes you feel old as dirt as coming back to your high school 25 years later to address the current students. So, since I have been here, I already know what you guys are thinking. You're sitting here like, man, I just did this to get out of class. Hurry up, say what you got to say, and get off the stage. I already know what you guys are thinking, but it's not going to be like that. We're actually going to have a good time for the next 10 to 15 minutes. So I was asking a little bit about you guys to try to understand the current climate at Sapulpa High School, and I hear you guys have a problem with your dress code. Okay, I have absolutely zero sympathy for you because when I was here in '92 and I was a senior class president, I and my classmates fought hard just to wear shorts, so I could care less about your dress code. You guys get to wear whatever you want. We could not wear shorts until halfway through my senior year. And when you wore a skirt, it had to hit right here. So I say take the dress codes you have and embrace it and love it and hope they don't go backwards. Okay? So I want to tell you just a little bit about myself, and we're going to get into this. And I just want to say, I know I have some classmates out there that are teaching. I have some old coaches out there. I saw some people from my community out there, and so it's really cool to be back home, but it's also extremely nerve-wracking because everybody knows you at home, right? So when I started my career, I started out as, first half of my life was all about basketball. Everything was about basketball. I played Division I basketball at Kansas State University. Then I went to college and became a producer for ABC, Fox, CNN, CBS affiliates. Then I decided that I would become an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur, I produced a couple of magazines. I've been a celebrity publicist for a few people you guys might know. If you guys ever heard of Snoop Dogg or Nelly or Gap Band, a few NFL players, a few NBA players. From that, I also own the only diversity communications consulting, recruitment, and training firm in the state of Oklahoma for the past 20 years. And then, because I get bored, so I'm a little ADD, right? But with all the things that I've done, I've had one focus. And that focus has been about diversity and inclusion and our biases. All of the stuff that I've done, I did from this small town. It came from here. Not only that, it came, not even the whole town. I'm from an area we call the black side of town. Probably still call it that. I still call it that. In that community that I grew up in, we didn't have a whole lot, especially when you think about stores and economics. We had one very small neighborhood grocery store. We had a laundromat. We had a candy store that I can think of. And we had a recreation center. I'm sorry if I'm squinting. The lights are really bright up here and I can't see very well. By the time I was probably, I don't know if I was out of elementary when two of those things, I believe, the candy store and the laundromat, and anybody from the community that's here can correct me if I'm wrong, but those things were gone before I even got into junior high school. By the time I got into high school, even the grocery store was gone. But we had two things that meant a whole lot to me. The first thing was BTW Recreation Center. The gym was there every single day, it seemed like. The second thing our community had was a whole lot of love. A whole lot of love. A whole lot of support. See, you don't need a lot when you have love and support. Now, when I was asked to speak about my journey, I realized that my journey started right here in this school. Right here, thinking about diversity, thinking about inclusion, even though that's not what I called it. So I was in what you would call, me and my best friend, we were in what you would call a spirited debate with the history teacher about Cleopatra. And was Cleopatra black or not? So back then, and I don't know what it's like now, admittedly, but back then, we learned a lot about slavery in history. We learned a little bit about Martin Luther King and a little bit about Malcolm X, the big names. But we didn't learn very much about our heritage. So when it came to Cleopatra and she was Egyptian, and she probably wasn't black, but she was a person of color. And we were fighting for the recognition of that. And that left me with this void of saying, you know what? If that's not going to be recognized, I'm going to do my own work. So every paper that I had to write, every speech I had to give, I thought I'm going to educate. I'm going to educate my teachers, I'm going to educate my classmates, and in the midst, I'm learning myself. Because to me, when you diminish a group of people down to just being slaves, to me that diminishes the contributions that they made to the world. That's not who they are, that's who they became. So what I wanted to do was dispel the myth of it's not even a myth, but I wanted to dispel the thoughts that all that existed for the African American culture was slavery. Because who were those people before they were slaves? So I took that and carried it all the way through college and tried to decide, hey, do I want to major in black history? Do I want to major in communications, and I chose communications because I thought I could have a larger impact on the world. So this is a Black History program or a cultural awareness program. I could stand here and tell you guys about who invented the cotton gin, caller ID, call forward and call waiting, air conditioning, the comb. I'll just say they were all Black people. And there are millions of other inventions by African Americans that we use every day. But you can look that up on Google. I want to spend the next 10 minutes I have talking about some real stuff. Stuff that I just got back from Belfast, Ireland speaking. I'm going to Ecuador in a couple of months. And I've spoken to more than a few high schools now. And we have real issues. They're tearing our communities apart. They're tearing our schools apart. It's tearing our world apart. And it is the concept of us versus them. Us versus them. You guys heard me say diversity. I have a diversity and inclusion consulting firm. What diversity means is it's your race, it's your ethnicity, it's your religion, your sexuality, your age, your gender. But it's also how you dress, how you rock your hairstyle. You know, it's your food preferences. Diversity is who you are. It's what makes you, you. Where we're messing up at is the inclusion part of it, because we're not allowing for people to feel invited, involved, and engaged. At the root of a lot of the things that we're dealing with, it has to do with the fact that we're not letting other people in. We have a school shooting every other week, it seems like. People feel excluded. I'm not saying that's the total reason, because there are a lot of things, a lot to unwrap with that. But what I'm saying is, when you consistently exclude people based on who they are, you leave them out. And we have what's called unconscious biases. I want you guys to think about what you can do to make a difference, because that's what it's about. It's about taking time out to figure out not only who you are, but being okay with who someone else is. We're so caught up in wanting people to be like us. If you don't look like me, if you don't talk like me, if you don't live where I live, it diminishes who you are. I guarantee you we each have enough to worry about within our own lives than to worry about trying to change somebody else's life. We have to work harder at taking care of us, because we cannot fix what's going on in the world. We can't fix our schools, we can't fix our communities if we don't fix ourselves first. If you want to affect change in someone's life, you can do that through including them. I'm going to tell you a quick story about us versus them, because us versus them happens so smoothly that we don't even know that it's happening. It's introduced to us by the people that we love and care about. My grandmother was a maid for a white family here in Sapulpa for many, many years. There were times when I would go to work with her. One particular time I went to work with her to play with her boss's grandkids. And her boss asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. Well, they asked all of the kids. I'm thinking hard, I'm probably 6 or 7 years old, and it gets to me and I say, I want to be a maid. Like my grandmother was a maid. I thought she had a pretty sweet gig. But it really wasn't about that, it was about how awesome I thought she was. And so I said I wanted to be a maid, and everybody's clapping and you know, as if I made a good decision, and there's nothing wrong with being that. It's just that she wanted more for me. So she runs out the kitchen, and she gets on her knees and grabs me and says, do you think I'm doing this because I want to? I'm thinking, yes. No, I'm doing this because I have to. You are going to college. When I think back on it, it got really awkward, really quiet in that room. Really awkward. Nobody's saying anything. I don't understand what I've done wrong, but as we are driving home, she says to me, when I was younger, I wanted to be a nurse. There were only a few places where a black woman could be a nurse. Oklahoma wasn't one of them. And for many reasons, she wasn't allowed to go to the places where she could be. In my young mind, as I'm asking her, why couldn't you be a nurse right here at home? She's explaining to me that they wouldn't allow it. And then as I'm growing up, I'm taught that I have to learn how to read, how to write, how to do all these things that I should be learning in school because they also may not teach me the way they teach the other kids. Now see, this is introduced as an unrecognizable part of my upbringing because for her, it was valid and it was something that she needed to do. But what it does is instill in us that there's an us versus them because obviously them are taking care of themselves, so we need to take care of us. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that because what happens is that we grow up with these different thoughts and these different influences and we carry this stuff with us and it affects us on a daily basis. When I was here at Sapulpa, I was one of the top basketball players in the state. I worked hard. I had two goals from the time I was probably in the 5th grade. One, to bring a state championship to Sapulpa High School, and two, to become an all-state basketball player. The basketball championship didn't happen for a lot of reasons. Won't even go into that. Still kind of salty about it. But the all-state thing didn't happen either. To this day, I couldn't figure out why, but I'm going to tell you why I thought it was. And I don't know if it's true or not. It was really inconceivable to me that it wouldn't happen. And so when it was announced and it was in the paper, I was sick. I was sick about it. Much later, I find out from another coach that my coaches didn't turn in my paperwork. Now the other two players from my team who made the team, who deserved to be there, I have no issues with that. Their paperwork was turned in. In my young mind, and I didn't ask any questions because I was just a teenager, but in my young mind, the paperwork of the people that they didn't forget to turn in were white. And so I wasn't able to unpack that. I've gone all these years in dealing with that because I know that I deserve to be there. My point with that story is that when we don't ask questions and we take things on the surface, it leads us to live our lives in a way that creates an us versus them dynamic. We can't allow that to go on. We have to be able to go to people, to say to people, what happened? If I can build authentic relationship, in which I did have authentic relationship, which is probably why it hurt more than it normally would have, is having the conversations. Our culture, our political climate is messed up right now. It's really, really messed up. And it is up to you guys. It's up to all of us, but you guys are coming up. You're the future. And right now I'm a little bit worried about the future because I've been to so many high schools and we're going backwards. I need you guys to think about what it is you can do, how you can make a difference. Do me a favor. If you belong to the African American race, stand up for me. Stand up. If you belong Hispanic, Latino race, stand up for me. You belong to the Asian race, stand up. Stand up. No, be quiet. Be quiet, just stand up. The white race, Caucasian race, stand up. Native Americans. If you belong to the human race, stand up. Keep standing for me for just a second. Be quiet, but keep standing for me. What I want you guys to realize is when I asked you to stand up by the group that you associate with, those were small numbers. But when I asked you to stand up as a human race, look at us. Look at the strength that we are. Black history does not only belong to black people. And you can go ahead and sit down if you want to. It belongs to all of us. What affects me will eventually affect you. Don't wait till problems hit your doorstep to get involved. As I just said, we're going backwards. If you think about the 60s, I watched violent protests on TV. Guess what? I just watched violent protests on TV late last year. We had church bombings, now we have church shootings. I watched the marches and read about the marches. I myself have participated in marches against or for equality. We're going backwards. This is not where it's supposed to be. Black history belongs to all of us. All of our history belongs to all of us, and we can no longer stand separately. We have to stand together so that we can continue to fight bias, bigotry, and racism. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate that you guys invited me back home. Thank you guys so much for having me.
At this time, I would like to present Coach Caleb and some of her basketball greats.
Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Grant for coming out and speaking to us, and hopefully she gave us some words of wisdom to kind of open our minds and insight as to what's going on, and hopefully we can come together and become a better school. Just as a token of our appreciation from Sepulveda High School and the girls basketball program, we would like to present Ms. Grant with the gift of our appreciation to say welcome back and thank you for all she's doing for our community. Hello. Okay. Quoted from a sermon of Martin Luther King, we must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. And now Lean on Me is performed by Aaron Weiser, Mason Leonard, and Maddie Smith-Broom. Accompanied by Bruce Wilson.
Here. I don't know how to.
In our lives, we all have faith. We all have so
Coming. They're calling.
In 2016, a movie called Hidden Figures was made to recognize the inspiring story of 3 highly intelligent women who changed the scene for NASA. Katherine Johnson held a mathematics PhD and also took a position at the All-Black West Area Computing Section at the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA. I gotta wait. Where are my ladies at? Okay. Yeah, you can sit next to me. Katherine Johnson held a mathematics PhD and also took a position at the All-Black West Area Computing Section at the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA. Dorothy Bond became NASA's first African American. Mary Jackson, manager, became known as a human computer, was soon promoted to NACA engineer. Thank you.
Tuskegee Airmen. Over the past 7 decades, the exploits of the Tuskegee Airmen have been celebrated. Occasionally mythologized and used as a recent reminder of the patriotism and heroism of African Americans in times of national crisis. These airmen were prized and respected in the Army Air Force for their successful in closely protecting Allied bombers flying missions into Axis territories. Among them were 4-star generals Benjamin O. Davis Jr., Major General Lucius Theus, and sociologist Dr. Dempsey W. Morgan. Thank you. Tuskegee Airmen and Hidden Figures. After a decade of civil rights struggles, in 1967, Martin Luther King published his last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? Here with the profound thought of what if is Miss Maddie Smith Broom with A Day of Color.
I need you to use your imagination and think about a day without color. A very humorous and revealing story was told about a group of white people who were fed up with African Americans. So they joined together and they just wished them away. They passed through a deep, dark tunnel and emerged into a sort of a twilight zone where there was an America without people of color. At first, these people were relieved, and they said, whew, all the people of color are gone. Then suddenly, the reality set in. The new America was not the America they liked at all. It was a barren land. There were very few crops that had flourished because the nation was built on slave-supported systems. There were no cities with tall skyscrapers because Alexander Mills, a man of color, had invented the elevator, and without it, you couldn't reach the top floor. There were very few cars because Richard Sykes, a black man, had invented what was then called an automatic gear shift. Joseph Gamble invented the supercharged system for the internal combustion engine, and Garrett A. Morgan, a black man, had invented the traffic signals. Furthermore, one could not use the rapid transit system because its procurer was the electric trolley, which was invented by another black man, Albert Robertson. Even if there were streets on which cars and rapid transit systems could operate, they were cluttered with paper because it was yet another person of color that had invented the street sweeper. There are few, if any, newspapers, magazines, or books because John Lowe invented the pencil sharpener, William Pulvey invented the fountain pen, and Lee Barrage invented a typewriting machine, with W.A. Love procuring an advanced printing press. And guess what? These were all people of color. Even if Americans could write their letters and books and articles, they couldn't be transported through the mail because the postmarking and canceling machine was one of William Pulvey's inventions. The lawns were brown and wilted. There was a man called Joseph Smith that worked on the lawn sprinkler, and John Burr, the lawn mower. When they entered their homes, they found them to be poorly ventilated and poorly heated. Why? Because you see, Frederick Jones invented the air conditioner, and Alice Parker the heating furnace. Their homes were also dim, but of course, Lewis Latter invented the electric lamp, and Michael Harvey the lantern. Granville T. Woods invented the automatic cutoff switch. And you wouldn't think of it, but there was another invention, the mop and the dustpan. Their children met them at the door. They were barefooted, shabby, motley, and unkempt. And what could one expect? Jan E. Masslinger invented a shoe-lasting machine, while Walter Salmons invented a comb, and Sarah Boone the ironing board, and George T. Sampson the clothes dryer. Finally, they were resigned to have their dinner amidst all this turmoil. But there again, their food had spoiled because another black man, John Stanford, had worked on the refrigerator. Hey, isn't that something? What would this country be like without the contributions of people of color? Martin Luther King said, by the time we leave for work, Americans have depended on inventions from the minds of the blacks. Black history includes more than just slavery. Men like Frederick Douglass or Martin Luther King or Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey and W. Du Bois. There's a lot of contributions that were made by people of color. And if you decide to go and Google some of the things that I've said, you may find another name associated with it. And that is because if you were a slave, you weren't entitled to be able to be publicized. Thank you.
March 6, 1857, U.S. Supreme Court Dred Scott decision denies citizenship to blacks. But the first black The first bank for blacks opened October 17, 1888. December 25th, 1907, jazz entertainer Cab Calloway was born. Now, here, welcome Breon Williams singing A Million Dreams.
I close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me, that I call my own. Through the dark, through where no one's been before, but it feels like home. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say I've lost my mind. I don't care if they call me crazy. We can live in a world that we desire. Every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my world. A million dreams I keep awake. I think of what the world might be, a vision of the world I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. Oh, a million dreams for the world we're gonna make. In the past we can build, and every room inside is filled with things from far away. Special things I can pop, each one there will make you smile on a rainy day. They can say that sounds crazy. They can say we've lost our minds. And I don't care if they call us crazy. We're on the way to a world that we desire. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams I keep awake. I think of where the world might be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. Oh, a million dreams for the world we're gonna make. However big, however small, let me be part of it all. Share your dreams with me. You may be right, you may be wrong. Say that you'll bring me along to the world we see, to the world I close my eyes to see. I close my eyes to see.
September 17, 1849, Harriet Tubman escaped from slavery, the beginning of the Underground Railroad. Not until April 20, 1853. April 16, 1862, slavery abolished in Washington, D.C. She was then and is still now considered to be a phenomenal woman, and presented today by Danae Thomas.
So, many people wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built the average model size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's the reach in my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, and the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man, the fellow stands or may drop to his knees. Then they swarm around me, hive of honeybees, and I say, it's the fire in my eyes, it's the flash of my teeth, or the swing in my waist and the joy of my feet, because I am a woman, phenomenally. Men themselves has wondered what they see in me. They try so hard, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they still can't see. I say, it's the arch in my back, it's the sun of my smile, the ride of my breast, and the grace of my style, because I am a woman, phenomenally. Now you understand just why my head is not bowed. I don't gotta jump and shout or even talk real loud. Because when you see me passing you, it ought to make you proud. Because it's the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand is the need that you need of my care. Because I am a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, all you women and me. Thank you.
MLK possessed many words that provoke God and many words of wisdom. He said we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite wisdom, or never lose infinite hope. And in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Here singing Ain't No Mountain High Enough is the SHS Jazz Choir.
Martin Luther King once stated, "We are not makers of history, we are made by history." We may have all come on different ships, but we are in the same boat now. And now, Kanaya Tiger and Keelan Bearpaw are here with a Creek hymn.
Thank you, guys. MLK was indeed a visionary. He once started everything that we see as a shadow cast by that which we do not see, or stated, sorry. Expressing that once again is Miss Kimberly Manning.
Well, hello, Sapulpa High. All right. I typically introduce myself as Kimberly Manning, the mighty and magnificent warrior. You can tell I just watched Black Panther, right? But to be truthful, that part of the introduction usually only takes place inside my head. But that doesn't make it any less true. I am, in fact, a mighty and magnificent warrior in a struggle that is very real for a lot of people, maybe even some of you in here. And when I took up arms for this cause, it took a lot of courage. It took me taking on this I don't give a flying flip type of attitude. And it required me to let go of some long-held, deeply rooted, misconceived notions about beauty. This was a struggle for self-acceptance. Now, every individual in here, I don't care what your age is, oldest or youngest, you have your own struggles. And they could be different. You guys are similar to each other, but each of you are individuals. Now, I'm going to share with you my struggle, but keep in mind any struggles that you might have. About 10 years ago, I decided to do what is known as the Big Chop. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this, it's when someone, usually in the African American community, who has chemically altered the molecular structure of their hair in order to permanently straighten it, decides that they are going to chop off all of that chemically straightened hair. And in preparation for the Big Chop, anybody I saw who had gone natural, and what that is, someone who decides to wear their own naturally curly, or in my case, naturally kinky hair, without the aid of chemical relaxers. Whenever I saw someone who had gone natural, I would stop them and inquire about their hair care maintenance. Inevitably, these women would climb up on top of their soapbox and begin to lecture me about how we as Black African American women need to embrace our natural beauty and not be enslaved by the need to conform to someone else's image of beauty. And I've got to be very frank with you. Usually when that happened, I kind of zoned out. And I would fantasize about saying, now look, lady, I just want to know what kind of hair products you use, how long it takes you to detangle your hair. I was really not prepared for this philosophical dissertation on culture and beauty. But I had made up in my mind that I was going through with the Big Chop no matter what. So the day of my appointment came. I went to the hair salon. I sat down in the chair. I removed the black and white bandana I had tied around my hair. The stylist looked at me and said, "Are you sure about this?" And because of my own reasons and not because of what other people thought my reasons should be, I confidently looked at her and said, "Yes, shave it all off." But you see, at the time that I went through with the Big Chop, I had absolutely no clue that I was becoming a warrior for self-acceptance. I was simply tired of shelling out all of the money to the beauty salon so that they can straighten my hair. I was tired of suffering from chemical burns every 6 to 8 weeks when I went back to get the new growth straightened. I had decided that I was going to shave my head, and I didn't care what anybody else thought about the idea. I didn't even care if I was going to look like a dude. I just needed something different. And after the initial shock of seeing my practically bald head for the very first time, I had an aha moment. And this aha moment took me way back to my childhood, where I have very fond memories of sitting in the kitchen on Sunday mornings in front of my grandmother, who would be getting me ready for church service by pressing my hair with a hot metal comb that she would heat up on the kitchen stove. I also have some not so fond memories of getting burned by said pressing comb if I moved too suddenly, or if I didn't hold my ear down quite long enough for the comb to make its pass. When my sister and I got a little older, we graduated from getting our hair temporarily straightened with a hot pressing comb to getting it permanently straightened by chemical relaxers. Now, my baby sister was just fine, but as soon as they put that cream on my head, my scalp began to tingle. The tingling turned to burning, and on one occasion, that burning turned to blisters. And I suffered through that pain every 6 to 8 weeks religiously well into my adulthood. Makes you wonder why someone would put themselves through that type of pain. It's interesting how something as simple as a haircut forced me to sort through sometimes complicated concepts and ingrained belief systems that I never thought to question before. I began to understand why these women, when I asked them about their hair care and maintenance routine, began to morph into these militant ministers of Maine preaching to me self-accepted sermons. You see, during my formative years, I was somehow programmed, be it intentional or not, I was somehow programmed to believe that straight hair was synonymous with being presentable. Straight hair was synonymous with professionalism. Having straight, long, silky, smooth, flowing hair was synonymous with beauty itself. And I was somehow convinced that I could not be beautiful with the hair that naturally grew out of my head, because that kinky hair was not presentable, professional, pretty. But I'm here to tell you, like I said before, this is not really about hair, because we all have some natural physical trait that we might not be 100% satisfied with. It could be a gap in your teeth, a bowed leg, freckles, bushy eyebrows, a quirky mannerism, dark skin, light skin, whatever it is, you have to understand that that natural trait is not the opposite of beautiful. It's just a different kind of beautiful, your kind of beautiful. And it's okay if you want to change it, but you have to understand that simple fact that it is beautiful. I guess all I'm really trying to say here is that it doesn't really matter if your hair is long, short, kinky, curly, easy to comb, hard to comb, glued in, sewn in, fried, dyed, or laid to the side. It's okay, whether you change it or not. You know, when you understand that fact, when you understand that your natural God-given self is beautiful, it instills a sense of confidence. And who knows, maybe you'll have enough confidence to consider yourself a mighty and magnificent warrior. You might even have enough confidence to say that out loud. Thank you.
We have a presentation that literally speaks volumes and trying to express exactly what our local NAACP chapter needs to convey. We are all codependent on each other. Please consider the thought of coming together. Coach Bruner and Coach Hall are not here, but Miss Malloy, Miss Johnson, and Miss Smith-Broom will attempt to pull it together with the brick house.
I think we had some technical difficulties, so moving right along.
March 23rd, 1916, Marcus Garvey arrived in America from Jamaica. Now, before we hear words of dismissal from Mr. Warren, let us enjoy some pleasing sounds of our drum line. Thank you for your attention and respect. And right now, to the drum.
And I don't even see them. Bear with us for just a moment. Thank you all very much for all your attention and your respect. And here's the drum line.
participation and behavior. You guys were great. I want to thank Miss Maddie once again. You guys give her a hand. Guys, thank you so much. You're going to go back to your 7th hour class.